What is up, guys? I'm Benny, they call me Bear, and today we are going to be replacing the rear axle seal on our JK. And like always, first thing you're gonna have to do, jack up the Jeep, take your tire off, then use your tire as a safety. Under the Jeep's frame, just in case your jack stand fails. We want to be safe. Right, so once we're there, first thing we're going to do is remove the brake caliper bracket. Now I'll get you a better angle on that and we'll go ahead and remove that. Alrighty guys, first thing we're going to need to do after we take our wheel off, we're going to use an 18mm wrench to take this whole brake caliper bracket off the Jeep. I call these the tightest bolts in the world. They're your brakes, so you don't want those bolts coming loose. So they're gonna be on there tight. And then again, that's what you want. Got them loose enough. We'll see if we have enough space to use our electric ratchet. There we go. I thought I had enough space. Turns out I didn't. All right, so you want to be careful with your brake line. You want it to get tangled up. All right, we're gonna put this brake caliper out of the way. We're gonna also be replacing our brake pads, so we don't need these. Just gonna get them out. And the little clips they come with, take those out as well. All right, cool. So yeah, we're just gonna secure this out of the way. Hopefully there's enough space where I can latch it on here. There we go. And we'll secure that here in a second. Next thing we want to do, get our brake off. And you can tell on the inside, all the oil that's been leaking there mixed with all the brake pad material. Yep, that's pretty oily. And then I'll take you a little bit closer so you can see all the oil that's built up on there over the last however long we've been leaking. So, all right, next thing we're gonna do, since we are also replacing our parking shoe brake shoes, first thing we're gonna do is take out our axle. Before we can take out our axle, we have to remove 4 bolts of the axle of the bearing retainer plate. And I'm going to use the GoPro here and show you, take you a little bit closer to where you're going to be needing to work. And that's going to be right back here. So you can tell that's 1 right there, 2 right there. Then we're going to go around the other side, 3 and 4. And we're also going to need to take out our wheel speed sensor right there. So these are 18s as well. There's a lot of grease, so we'll hit these up first with some degreaser maybe, and then we'll go from there. So I don't know if you can tell, guys, but there's a lot of oil and grime built up around these bolts, which makes them easy to take off. And thankfully we live in Texas, so there's not rust to worry about. All right, so those are broke loose now. We can get our ratcheting wrench in here and take them all the way out. These are going to be reused, so make sure you save them. Yeah, so our ratcheting wrench only works on one. Electric ratchet actually works in here. So make sure you don't get caught again. And this last one, we're gonna have to do it old-fashioned way. Actually, there might be enough space if I use an extension. Just about enough. All right, so we're gonna save the hardware. All right, so now our axle should be loose. That plate is out. Before we do anything, we're going to take this wheel speed sensor out, and that should be an 8mm. So let's go get that right now and we'll take it on out. Now we just slide our wheel speed sensor out, and it's all nice and greasy, so we're gonna have to degrease this once we're done because we want it to read right. All right, so now our hands are all dirty. We are going to fix that real quick, and then we'll come back and keep going on this. All right guys, now with the wheel speed sensor out of the way, we can safely pull on our axle or our axle shaft. All right, so you would imagine you can just pull on it, and sometimes you can. This is very weird, right? So sometimes you can pull on it, and sometimes you can't. So you have to use a slide hammer. But I'm gonna show you another quick technique to do it in case you can't get your axle out that easy, right? Or say you're out on the trail and you don't have a slide hammer. What you're gonna do is you're gonna put your brake disc, right, on the opposite way. You're gonna grab a couple of lug nuts, right? You thread them in a little bit, not all the way, just a little bit to where they catch. And now you have a slide hammer built in right there. So you're just gonna grab your disc and you're gonna pull out and slam it as many times as you need to. So, and then you take off your lug nuts, take off your disc, and your axle's out, right? So previously, when I first pulled it out, it came out with the axle race itself. Now it's back in there, so it shouldn't be too much trouble getting it out. I'm gonna get a couple of shop towels real quick. All right. And you can tell also that our axle is nice and lubricated, honestly. There we go. That's our axle out. Axle shaft. All right, just give it a nice little clean before you go and set it down somewhere else. And that's what you're gonna be looking at. Right about there, right? So this is our retention plate. That is our bearing retention collar. That is our bearing itself, and that is our seal right there. And then the race stayed in, but when I pulled it out first, it came out with the axle. So it's just gonna go around and pull a little bit on side to side, and it'll come out. So that's your axle race, your bearing race, sorry. Out of the way, all right? So, as of right now, we're pretty much halfway there. All we have to do now is put in our new axle seal and bearing and everything. We're gonna clean this up with some good degreaser, just to make sure we're able to see any future concerns, right? We're gonna give this a good cleaning. We're gonna replace our drum pads for our parking brake, and I'll show you that here in a sec. But yeah, we're definitely gonna get all this nice and clean before we do anything, before we put anything back, right? So let's take it over to the vise, and then we'll cut this and get it out of the way. Alrighty guys, now that we're all set up on our workbench and vise, our axle is nice and secure. It's not going anywhere. We're going to be using a cutoff wheel on this ring real quick. And just remember to wear your iPro, gloves, ears, anything you need, right? And we're gonna be hitting this ring almost halfway. Make sure you don't hit the axle shaft. Going at an angle helps. Don't worry if you hit the bearing cage. We're gonna be cutting that off too, so it doesn't really matter if you hit it or not. But since we have our axle, our bearing retainer ring kind of weakened, we're gonna try our air hammer, see if we can get that to break the rest of the way. There you go. You can do this with a regular hammer and chisel. And there you go. So now we're into our bearing itself. Once all your rollers are out, you'll be good to go. Make sure you pick them off of the floor. Alright, gotta move it. And there we go. Inner race is out. Now we can get our seal, right, and our retaining plate. Get our axle off of the vise. Alrighty, now that we have everything out, we're gonna get our axle off of our vise. Let everything fall. Put our axle to the side. We're gonna look at these components real quick. So first thing, that is your bearing retainer plate, axle shaft retaining plate. Right? We nicked it a little bit, but it'll be all right for reusing. That should be good. We'll just clean it up. And that is our old axle seal. It's a Yukon. And that spring damage right there and seal, I don't know if that's from us using the air hammer or it just being ripped. But most likely it was already ripped before, and this is the reason it failed and the reason we're changing it. So it could be either, could be both. And then again, our inner race and our retaining ring and the roller cage. Get all of this out to the side. We'll open up the new stuff, we'll compare it, and then we'll go from there. So we got our replacements from Extreme Terrain, and we got the Crown Automotive kit. It comes with your seal. That's a more substantial seal, I feel, than the Yukon. Pretty similar. Looks pretty good. Then we have our actual bearing and our retaining ring. The retaining ring, nothing super special to write home about. It's just a nice retaining ring. This can go either way. It doesn't really matter once we put it in. And then this is our actual bearing. Now Crown uses Timken bearings, which is one of the best names in bearings. All right, so it's all nice and greased up. It's ready to go. This goes towards the inside or towards the outside in relation to the axle, right? It goes that way. That little thin slice right here goes in like that towards our axle end, axle shaft end, right? So we'll put this to the side. We'll get everything ready and then go to the press. Before we start reassembling our axle shaft, putting in our keeper plate, the new bearing, seal, retaining ring, we're gonna clean it up, right? And I'll show you what I like to use. I like to use Super Clean. I like to use the foaming one because it lets me see what it's doing. I'm gonna show you just to make sure we have a nice clean surface to work on. Man, this thing, you don't really need much, and you can already see the foam starting to do its job. It like starts turning a dark color once you get it in there. It like starts taking everything out super quick. Man, you can already see it working. I'm not sponsored by these guys, but man, it works. Now, if I remember where I left it, we're gonna use just a little plastic brush. Look at that difference. Now we have a clean axle shaft to work with. It's gonna make everything so much easier. All right, our tone ring's gonna work just fine, nice and clean. Next, we're gonna clean up our retention plate. Again, using some of the Super Clean. Like I said, I'm not sponsored, guys, but man, if they reach out and want to sponsor the channel, man, that would be awesome. I'm always willing to work with companies that I enjoy their products. But I am a small channel, so I don't think that that will ever happen. Our piece is nice and clean, degreased. It's all ready to go back in. The rest is just surface rust. That's not going anywhere. And I don't feel like sanding and painting this, so we're just gonna go as is. So I'm gonna bring our axle back. All right, and I'll show you the order in which everything goes. First, our retention plate, right? It's gonna go, we're gonna call this side the outer side. We're gonna call the spline end the inner side because that's how the axle goes. So the bolts are gonna go towards the inner side, like that. Next thing that will go on is our actual axle seal or axle shaft seal, right? And we have the slip right here. That's gonna go towards the inside of the axle. This end right here is going to go towards the outside of the axle, right? So you want to be able to see this lip and spring on the inside. So we're just going to slide it down. Make sure it goes all the way in there. Before we do that, we're going to grab just a little bit of div lube and coat the inside just a little bit so that it goes on. We're gonna coat our axle shaft as well, just a little bit, so that it slides in and doesn't hurt the actual seal, right? So we're gonna put that, slide it right on, and that's where you want it. After that, next item to go on, it's going to be our actual bearing. And then, like I had mentioned, this smaller part, it's going to go towards the outside. The larger part goes towards the inside. So basically, you want to have the roller bearings, you want to have them facing outside. This lettering, you want to have it face up towards the inside. So this line is going to be close to our seal and flange, right? So we're going to drop it in there. That's where it's going to stop. Then we have our retention ring. We're going to drop that in there. And then from here, we're going to move over to the press and get all this pressed into place. And we'll go from there. I'll show you that process here in a second. Alright, so our ram is not a good diameter to press upon this face. So we're going to be using a plate that's inch thick as a press block. And then from right there, we are good to go and start pressing down. We'll get this close to where it needs to be. So right there, it's making contact with our plate and with our axle shaft. Alright, so now we just want to make sure we're centered and we're going to start pressing. So right there, you can already see the axle shaft going straight into the bearing. And as we go along, we'll hit that shoulder, and I'll get you in closer here in a second, just so you know exactly what's going on. Alrighty guys, so I got you now right up on the action. guys, always remember to wear eye pro. So this is you wearing eye pro right now, but this is me. So I'm gonna put them back on because you never know what can pop out. You want to be safe, so always wear your eye pro. And you can tell where the seat is right there in that little ridge, right? So we're gonna keep pressing down, take a look, make sure everything's still centered up. Everything sounds right. It's sliding in just fine. And we're about to get to the right spot. And right there, I can already feel it's not moving anymore. And there you go. We're all pressed in. Our bearing is right where it needs to be on that shoulder. You saw that gap disappeared right about there. And obviously we can't press down anymore. You know, quite a good amount of resistance. We're just gonna loosen our press. And there you go, guys, our press plate. Perfect. Our axle face is good. And there you go, guys. Everything is right in place. Perfect. All right, let's get this axle out of the press and into our Jeep back once more. Alrighty, guys, so we are back Jeep side. We're gonna give this our outer axle the same treatment because there's a lot of grime and grease. We don't know if we're gonna see any more leaks. Obviously we're hoping not because we just changed the seal, right? But in the future we want to know, we want to start with a clean axle end just to make sure we're not losing any more oil. So we're gonna give it a quick cleanup, again using the foam. There you go, guys. Nice and clean. On to the next step. Alright, guys. Next step. Slide our backing plate and brake shoes back on. Make sure everything lines up. To hold that in place, I'm going to put the parking brake cable on. Spot real good. All right, next up, let's slide that axle back in. One thing to notice, guys, on this retention plate, there's these little cutouts on either side, opposite side, right, where the wheel speed sensor goes. You want to match those up when you put in the axle back in. All right, so we're going to grab our hardware, 18 mil nuts, remember that? We're going to go across in the back, get that hardware started. axle seated all the way. We have those cutouts. All right, working perfectly. All right, we're gonna grab our 18 mil. And on these ones, you're gonna go opposite sides when you're tightening them down. So it's a spare, right? Imagine the spare, and then just go opposite sides and evenly. So it brings the axle all the way in. All right, we'll do the opposite side. Just enough. We're going to do the same on the other side. Again, so we drive all in all the way. So our ratcheting wrench doesn't really fit back there. So we're going to use our standard one. You want to get them nice and tight. I honestly couldn't find torque specs for these. Also, it's kind of a tight spot, so you can't really get a torque wrench in there. So you just want to make sure you get a nice tight pull on it. Give it a quick inspection. Axle's rolling good in the seal. Seal's nice and impressed. Bearing seems to be working just fine. And there you go. We'll just finish it out. Tighten it up. Nice and tight. Can't go any further. Same on this one. Same on that one. And there we go. All right. That right there is our axle seal, bearing, everything replaced. Again, we did the brake pads or the brake shoes for our e-brake. Now we're gonna put in a brand new brake disc. So if you came here for the axle and seal, for the seal and the bearing, you're done. Just put your wheel speed sensor back on, put your brake disc back on, put your wheel back on, and then you're done. If you want to keep watching, hang around. We're going to be doing the brakes next, so let's go on ahead and do that. Alrighty guys, so once again my camera cut off, but I didn't do anything special. I put the pads in, put our caliper on, so right now we're in the process of tightening it.